The smell of coffee clung to me no matter how many times I showered. I'd just finished another late-night shift at the cafe near Hongdae, wiping down counters long after the last customer stumbled out. My feet ached, my shoulders burned, and all I could think about was how much money I'd made. Barely enough to cover groceries for the week. Rent. Utilities. My parents' hospital bills. The never-ending debt that shadowed every breath I took. It was always there. The red numbers. The late notices. My mother's tearful apologies. My father's tired eyes. I wanted to scream sometimes. Scream at the world, at fate, at them. Why did they have to borrow money from people like that? Why did they put me in this position, working myself raw just to slow the inevitable? But screaming wouldn't change anything. So I kept my head down, clocked out, and stepped into the humid night air. That's when my phone buzzed, with a text from my only friend Min Taeyong asking me to meet him in Gangnam, a luxury bar. I almost laughed. I should have said no. But Taeyong was relentless, and maybe a part of me wanted to forget for a while, even if it was only for a night. The lounge was the kind of place people like me had no business entering. Marble floors, velvet booths, a chandelier dripping with crystals like frozen rain. Every table whispered of money, from the tailored suits to the designer handbags carelessly tossed aside. I tugged at my blazer, a cheap one Taeyong had forced me to wear years ago for a university presentation. It looked even cheaper here. My shoes squeaked against the polished floor, my reflection in the gold-framed mirrors screaming outsider. Taeyong, on the other hand, blended seamlessly. He strode through the lounge like he owned it, grinning as he waved at acquaintances. "Relax, Jaiwan. You look like you're about to get executed." "I don't belong here," I muttered. "You belong with me." He winked, sliding into a private corner booth and signaling for a bottle. "And I belong here. So by extension, you're fine." Easy for him to say. He'd grown up with this kind of wealth, private schools, overseas vacations, a credit card he didn't even look at when paying. I'd grown up with secondhand uniforms and ramen stretched for 3 days. I sat stiffly, watching him pour us drinks. The glass felt heavy in my hand, the liquor sharp as it burned down my throat. I told myself 1 drink, maybe 2, then I'd make an excuse and leave. But then I saw him. Across the room, leaning against the bar like it was a throne, stood a man I couldn't look away from. He didn't laugh like the others. Didn't fawn over anyone. He just existed. And everyone noticed. Tall, broad-shouldered, his suit so perfectly cut it seemed to sharpen his frame rather than soften it. His dark hair caught the low light, every strand in place. But it was his eyes, icy gray, focused, unyielding, that held me captive. My breath caught. Something about him pulled me in, dangerous and magnetic all at once. "Don't stare too hard," Taeyong said, following my gaze. "That guy? Dangerous." I tore my eyes away. "Who is he?" "Seo Junwoo." Taeyong's tone dropped, almost reverent. "Investor. Business mogul. Rumor is, even politicians bend to him. He's not someone you want noticing you." Seo Junwoo. The name settled in my chest like a stone, heavy and cold. I should have turned my attention elsewhere. But I couldn't. My eyes kept finding him. And more than once, I swore his eyes found me too. An hour later, Taeyong had disappeared into a crowd of glittering friends, laughing and drinking like the world belonged to them. I sat alone in the booth, heat buzzing in my veins from too much alcohol. I needed air. The alley behind the lounge was quiet, the hum of the city softened by the distant drizzle. I leaned against the brick wall, breathing deep, trying to clear my head. "Running away?" The voice was smooth, low, and it froze me where I stood. I turned slowly, and there he was, Seo Junwoo. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. His presence filled the narrow alley, his gaze pinning me like a hawk pins prey. I just needed some air, I managed. He stepped closer. His shoes didn't make a sound, but every nerve in my body screamed at his nearness. He smelled expensive, clean, sharp like rain on steel. "You don't belong in there." His words weren't cruel, just matter of fact. I stiffened. "I know." His mouth curved slightly. Not a smile. Something sharper. "And yet you came." I swallowed hard. Dragged, more like. He studied me, and I hated how naked I felt under his gaze. Like he could read every struggle etched into my skin. "Your friend is rich," he said finally. "You're not." The bluntness cut deep. My pride flared hot. "You don't know anything about me." "Don't I?" His eyes glinted. "I can tell you work harder than anyone in that lounge, but you're still drowning. I can see it in your hands." Rough, not soft. In your clothes. Worn, not tailored. You don't belong, but you want to. I wanted to punch him. I wanted to scream at him for saying out loud what I spent every night trying to bury. But instead, I whispered, "You talk too much for a stranger." He chuckled. A low, dangerous sound. Then he stepped closer. So close I felt the heat of his body, the brush of his breath against my cheek. "You've been staring at me all night," he murmured. My heart slammed against my ribs. "You noticed?" "I notice everything." And then, before I could breathe, his lips were on mine. The kiss was fire. Not sweet, not hesitant, hungry. His hand braced the wall beside my head, his body pressing me back. I gasped, but the sound was swallowed as his mouth moved against mine, demanding, consuming. My hands trembled before they betrayed me, gripping his suit jacket and pulling him closer. I hated myself for it, hated how good it felt. The world blurred. All I knew was the heat of his mouth, the strength of his grip, the taste of him sharp and intoxicating. When he pulled back, I was panting, my lips tingling. His gray eyes burned into me, unreadable but intense. "Come with me," he said. I should have said no. Every part of me screamed no. But the word caught in my throat, and I nodded. His apartment was another world. High ceilings, glass walls, silence that spoke of money I couldn't even imagine. We didn't sleep together. Not completely. But we didn't need to. The night was a blur of heat and skin, his lips bruising mine, his hands leaving trails of fire wherever they touched. I lost myself in him. For a few hours, I wasn't Han Jaiwin, son of debt and despair. I was just someone he wanted. When dawn came, reality returned like a knife. I woke in silk sheets, the air too cold, the room too pristine. Seo Junwoo was already up, buttoning his shirt with calm precision, as if nothing had happened. He glanced at me once, unreadable. The bathroom's down the hall. That was all. No tenderness. No promise. Just dismissal. Shame clawed through me as I dressed. What had I done? I wasn't like this. I wasn't someone who gave himself away to strangers, especially not men like him. But I had. And as I slipped out of his apartment, I told myself it was over. A mistake. Something I'd bury so deep it would never see daylight again. I didn't know then that I'd see him again. Not at a bar. Not on the street. But standing in my home. Claiming my parents' debt. By the time I stumbled back home, morning had already broken. The sun glared down on the cracked pavement outside our building, making every flaw stand out sharper. The peeling paint, the rusted pipes, the wilted plants someone had given up watering years ago. The air smelled like old rain and frying oil from the shop below. I stood there a long moment, my bag slung heavy over my shoulder, my lips still tingling faintly as if he'd just kissed me. Seo Junwoo. I hadn't said his name out loud, not even in my head until that moment. But once I did, my chest tightened like a fist closing around my lungs. I hated that I could still feel him. Hated that my body betrayed me with every phantom touch, every ghost of heat along my skin. I hated myself for wanting to stay in that bed for just one more minute, even though his voice had been so cold, so dismissive. And most of all, I hated that while I was wrapped in silk sheets, my parents were here, waiting, worrying, drowning. I shoved the memory away and climbed the narrow stairs to our apartment. Inside, the air was thick with silence. My mother sat at the kitchen table, her rosary tangled between her trembling fingers. My father's hands gripped a stack of papers, bills and notices scattered like fallen leaves across the surface. They looked up the moment I entered. My mother's face crumpled with relief, but the dark circles under her eyes stayed. My father's shoulders sagged. "You're home," he said, voice rough. "Yeah." I forced a smile, closing the door behind me. "Sorry, I had to cover a late shift." A lie. The biggest one I'd ever told. But what else could I say? "Sorry, I was kissing a stranger while you sat here drowning in fear." "Sorry, I was selfish enough to forget for one night." My mother's hands stilled on the rosary. They called again. My chest tightened. "Who?" "You know who." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He's coming today." The room tilted slightly. My throat went dry. "Did they say what time?" I asked, though I already knew it didn't matter. Men like that didn't give times. They arrived when they wanted, and you prayed you were ready. "No," my father muttered. "Just that he's on his way." Silence settled heavy between us. My mother's lips moved in silent prayer. My father rubbed his temples. And I sat there, staring at the cracks in the wall, my pulse thundering in my ears. The same thought circled endlessly in my head. If I worked harder, if I made more, if I hadn't wasted last night. But there was no undoing any of it. The knock came hours later. Sharp. Final. My mother flinched so hard the rosary slipped from her hands, beads scattering across the floor. My father froze, then pushed himself to his feet, every movement heavy with dread. My heart pounded as he opened the door. And there he was. Seo Junwoo. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating, that my guilt had twisted reality into something cruel. But no, it was him. Standing in our doorway, tall and sharp in another perfect black suit, his gray eyes colder than ice. The man who had kissed me until I forgot my own name. The man whose hands had burned against my skin. The man my parents feared. Seo Asai, my father's voice cracked. He bowed so low it hurt to watch. Please come in. Junwoo stepped inside, his gaze sweeping over the small, shabby apartment. The peeling wallpaper. The flickering light bulb. The stack of overdue bills. And then his eyes found me. Recognition flickered. Subtle. A curve of his mouth, almost invisible. But it was enough. My stomach dropped. He sat at the table like he owned it. Like he owned us. You've had enough extensions, he said calmly, his voice slicing through the silence. The amount you owe has doubled with interest. Do you have it? My father's hands shook as he placed the stack of papers in front of him. Please, we just need a little more time. Junwoo didn't even glance at the bills. Time doesn't stop interest. My mother clasped her hands, tears pooling in her eyes. We'll pay, I swear. Just please, give us a few more weeks. Junwoo's gaze was unreadable. Do you have the money now? Silence. My father's shoulders sagged. My mother bowed her head, a sob escaping her. Junwoo leaned back in his chair, his expression unmoved. Then words are useless. Anger surged hot in my chest. Stop, I said louder than I meant to. My voice cracked in the middle, but it cut through the room like a whip. Junwoo's eyes snapped to me instantly. And there it was, the recognition. The smirk, small but sharp. Han Jaiwon, he said softly, like a secret only he and I knew. My blood ran cold. My parents looked between us, confused. But Junwoo didn't give them time to question. I didn't expect to see you here, he continued, his tone edged with something cruel. Though I suppose I should have guessed. You were too desperate to belong last night. Heat flooded my face. Shame burned down my neck. He was doing this on purpose, reminding me, in front of them, of what I'd given him. My father frowned. You know my son? Junwoo's smirk deepened. We've met. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. He stood then, moving slowly, deliberately, until he was standing right in front of me. His height forced me to tilt my chin up to meet his gaze. Your parents have nothing left to give me, he said, his voice low but clear enough that every word sank deep into the silence. No money. No property. Nothing of value. His eyes narrowed slightly, glinting like steel. But you, my breath caught. You might be enough. The words hit harder than any slap. My stomach twisted. My mother gasped, horror etched across her face. No. Please leave him out of this. Stay out of it, Junwoo said sharply, his eyes never leaving mine. My father's voice shook. He's just a boy, old enough to make his own choices. Junwoo's gaze bored into me. So, Han Jaiwon, what will it be? Your freedom, or your family's ruin? The room spun. My pride screamed at me to refuse, to spit in his face, to tell him I'd never let him own me. But then I looked at my parents. My mother's trembling hands. My father's defeated shoulders. I couldn't breathe. If I refused, they'd lose everything. If I agreed, I'd lose myself. My voice cracked. My throat burned. Junwoo tilted his head, waiting, his smirk carved sharp as a blade. And in that moment, I knew I had no choice. I'll do it. The words left me like blood draining from a wound. My mother cried out, shaking her head. My father whispered my name in disbelief. But Junwoo's smirk widened, slow and satisfied. Good, he murmured. Then you're mine now, Han Jaiwon. My heart pounded, not from attraction this time, but from terror. From the crushing weight of a future I hadn't chosen. And from the knowledge that my heart, the one thing still mine, was already slipping into his hands. You will come with me tomorrow morning. Junwoo's voice had been low, precise, and completely in control. A car will be waiting. Be ready. I had nodded, but my chest felt like it was collapsing inward. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to tell him he couldn't command my life like this, that he didn't own me. But one glance at my parents' anxious faces flashed through my mind, and I had said nothing. Yes, I whispered. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. I lay in my small apartment, staring at the ceiling. My heart pounded so violently I thought it might burst from my chest. The memory of his words, his hands, his lips, everything from last night haunted me. I couldn't believe I had agreed to this. To him. The alarm on my phone rang, sharp and intrusive. My body stiffened. I sat up slowly, every muscle tense, knowing that when I opened the door, a car would be waiting. A car. A chauffeur. A world I had no business entering. I dressed quickly in my plain clothes, feeling every thread of fabric as if it mocked me. My hoodie smelled faintly of my own sweat, my shoes worn thin, my hands shaking. Outside, the sleek black car gleamed in the early sunlight, polished so perfectly it reflected the city around it. The chauffeur, impeccably dressed, held the door open silently, his expression unreadable. I hesitated, my stomach twisting. "You will come," Junwa's words echoed in my mind. The memory of his calm, commanding voice left no room for argument. I climbed in, my hands gripping the seat as if it could anchor me to reality. The leather smelled expensive, clean, and foreign. I couldn't stop my eyes from darting around, taking in the interior. A minimalist design, perfect stitching, silent technology. It was all unfamiliar, intimidating, and alluring. Junwoo sat across from me, calm as always. His gaze rested on me, measuring, unblinking. It was the same look from the lounge last night, the one that had made my knees weak and my chest tight. "Sit properly," he instructed softly, but the tone carried an unspoken command. I obeyed immediately, my pride screaming at me to resist, but my responsibility to my family silencing it. The drive was quiet. The city rolled past in a blur of morning light, cars, and pedestrians, but I felt trapped in my own panic. My mind replayed last night endlessly. The kiss, the touch, the heat. I had given myself to him without understanding the consequences. Now I was about to live those consequences. When we arrived at his penthouse, it rose above the city like a fortress, glass reflecting sunlight off polished steel. I froze, overwhelmed. This was his domain, untouchable and perfect, and I had no place here. Junwoo stepped out first, motioning for me to follow. "Welcome," he said calmly, holding the door open. The interior stole my breath. Marble floors gleamed under my shoes. Expansive windows framed the city, sunlight painting golden patterns across minimalist furniture. Art hung on the walls. Pieces I couldn't even begin to name, expensive in ways my mind refused to quantify. Junwa's eyes swept over me like he was cataloging everything. The clothes I wore, the way I held myself, my tense posture. I felt exposed, raw, and ridiculous. "You will be living here," he said simply. "For now." My voice caught in my throat. I can't." "You can," he interrupted, his gray eyes flashing, just enough to make me tremble. "This is non-negotiable." I felt my chest tighten. My parents had no choice. I had no choice. And somehow, that made the situation worse. I hated myself for complying. The first thing Junwoo did was offer me new clothes. Designer, perfectly tailored, laid out neatly on a chair. "Try these," he said, watching me carefully. "They will fit better than what you have." I shook my head. I don't need. "You will wear them," he said softly but firmly. "Now." I hesitated, my fingers brushing his briefly as I reached for the fabric. A spark ran up my arm. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. Just observed with that same unrelenting gaze. I felt humiliated, small, and exposed. And yet, a strange warmth spread through me at the fact that he cared enough to notice every detail. Changing quickly, I realized for the first time the stark contrast between my old life and this one. Even the simplest things, clothes that fit, shoes that didn't hurt my feet, felt like luxury I had no right to. Lunch was another lesson in this strange, terrifying indulgence. A tray appeared with dishes I couldn't name, arranged perfectly. The smell was intoxicating. He guided me on what to eat, commented on my posture, my hesitation. He wasn't cruel, not exactly, but every instruction carried weight, a reminder of his control. "Eat properly," he said at one point, eyes fixed on mine. "You've been surviving on scraps. That won't do." I flushed with embarrassment. I was 30 years old, and I felt like a child being scolded. And yet, somewhere deep in my chest, I felt a flicker of gratitude. I had never been cared for like this. I hated the feeling. The afternoon passed with tours of the penthouse. Each room was curated for perfection. Marble bathrooms, a private library, floor-to-ceiling windows with city views, an entire wardrobe I could only dream of. And everywhere I went, Junwoo followed, silently observing. My posture, my hands, the way I breathed. Every flinch and hesitation noted. You fidget too much, he observed casually. I can't help it, I admitted, cheeks burning. I'm not used to this. You will be, he said, voice low, promise and command entwined. By evening, I was exhausted, overwhelmed by wealth, indulgence, and fear. Junwoo had shown me luxuries I had never imagined, new clothes, gourmet meals, private spaces I couldn't believe existed. He had begun to spoil me, carefully, deliberately, ensuring I knew I was being observed, controlled, and desired. Later, he allowed me privacy to settle into a bedroom I could never have afforded. Alone, I sat on the edge of the bed, thinking about the day. My heart pounded with fear, shame, and something else I didn't want to admit. I was terrified of him. I hated how much I was drawn to him. I hated how he could make me feel cared for and humiliated at the same time. By nightfall, I realized something terrifying. I was entirely his now, in body, mind, and circumstance. And yet, part of me secretly longed for his attention, his indulgence, his commanding presence. I hated that too. I woke up to soft light spilling across the penthouse floor. For a moment, I forgot where I was, then reality crashed down like a tidal wave. Seo Junwa's world. I lay there, heart hammering, remembering the command I had obeyed without hesitation the night before. My body still tingled at the memory of his touch, the weight of his gaze, the heat of his lips against mine. I hated that part of me that wanted him again. I swung my legs off the bed and froze. The penthouse bedroom felt impossibly luxurious, the silk sheets, the soft rug beneath my feet, a neatly folded set of clothes waiting for me. Breakfast had been left on the counter, perfectly arranged, with a note in Junwa's elegant handwriting. Eat properly. Don't make me wait. I swallowed hard. He was already controlling me, even from another room. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, he appeared from the hallway like he had been waiting, perfectly composed, the sun glinting off his dark suit. His gray eyes landed on me immediately, calm, commanding, and dangerous. Good morning, he said softly, but his gaze swept over me with that same intensity as last night. You look nervous. I'm not, I mumbled, trying to steady my voice, though my chest betrayed me with every beat. He smirked faintly. You are. Don't lie to me. My ears burned, and I wished for the floor to swallow me whole. Junwoo didn't touch me, not yet. But the way he moved around the room, the way he poured juice into a glass and handed it to me, his fingers brushing mine just long enough to make me flinch, it was torture. You've never been spoiled, he said, watching me as I took a hesitant sip. I'll have to correct that. I wanted to protest. I wanted to tell him I didn't need this. But the truth was, I didn't know how to refuse. Not him. Not now. He guided me through the penthouse, showing me amenities I didn't know existed. A private library with floor-to-ceiling books, a walk-in wardrobe filled with clothes I couldn't have imagined, a dining area overlooking the city skyline. Every detail screamed perfection. And I felt small. Here, he said, selecting a jacket from a rack and tossing it to me. Try this. It'll fit better than whatever you've been wearing. I caught it awkwardly, fingers brushing against his. Heat shot through me, and I immediately looked away. Junwa's smirk deepened, subtle but deliberate. You're nervous. That's cute. I wanted to disappear. And yet, part of me longed for him to look at me that way. Lunch was another lesson in indulgence. A tray appeared with dishes I couldn't even pronounce. The smells made my stomach twist with hunger and anxiety. He guided me gently, observing every motion as I hesitated over the unfamiliar food. You're fumbling, he teased softly, gray eyes glinting. Eat properly. You'll choke if you're clumsy. I flushed, embarrassed, and dropped my chopsticks for a second. He reached out, helping me pick them up, his hand brushing mine. It lingered slightly longer than necessary, and I felt my pulse spike. Careful, he whispered, leaning just close enough that I could feel the heat from his body. I don't like sloppy behavior. I swallowed hard, trying not to notice how magnetic he was, how commanding, how overwhelming. Afternoon came, and with it more subtle tests. He had me help select clothes for an outing, observing every hesitation, every awkward choice. You're indecisive, he remarked, his voice calm but heavy with judgment. I expected better. I tried to argue, but the words caught in my throat. He was right, and he knew it. And then something unexpected happened. Junwoo stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his warmth. He brushed a strand of hair from my forehead, his fingers lingering near my temple. My eyes widened, my breath caught. I could get used to this, he murmured, voice low, almost a whisper meant for me alone. I wanted to pull away. I should have. But I couldn't. The first kiss came quietly. He leaned just slightly, giving me no choice but to tilt my head. His lips were soft, insistent, brushing mine in a tentative rhythm that left my chest aching. I froze at first, then responded instinctively, caught between fear, shame, and an undeniable pull toward him. His hand cupped my cheek, thumb brushing lightly across my skin. The kiss deepened just a fraction, teasing, playful, not rushing, making my heart race and my body tingle. "Junwoo," I whispered, but my voice sounded unsure even to me. He pulled back slightly, smirking, his gray eyes alight with amusement and something else I couldn't name. "Careful, Jaiwon. I like it when you're nervous." I felt both humiliated and thrilled. How could one person make me feel so small and so desired at the same time? Later, he drew me into a private sitting area, soft music playing faintly in the background. His presence was suffocating and intoxicating all at once. He brushed his fingers along mine as we reached for the same book. He leaned closer, whispering teasing remarks that made my ears burn. And then another kiss. This one was slightly bolder, deeper, lingering longer. My hands trembled, unsure whether to push him away or pull him closer. The heat between us was undeniable, yet nothing overtly explicit occurred. Just the tension, the warmth, the intoxicating closeness. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. "You're mine now, Jaiwon. Don't forget that." I shivered, heart racing, mind reeling. By evening, I was exhausted, overwhelmed by both the luxury around me and the intensity of Junwoo's attention. He had spoiled me, tested me, teased me, and pulled me into his orbit with every word, every glance, every subtle touch. I sat on the edge of the bed later that night, alone, replaying every kiss, every brush of his hand, every teasing smile. My emotions were tangled, fear, shame, longing, confusion. And I realized something terrifying. I didn't want this to end. I hated myself for it. But part of me wanted him to keep spoiling me, to keep teasing me, to keep claiming me in his quiet, commanding way. And I knew deep down that nothing in my life would ever be the same again.